Let me tell you how I divorced a man who hated who I was, not who he thought I was, not who I pretended to be for a while, not who I could have been if I had chosen a softer life, a quieter life, a life that didn't require me to stand in harm's way for people I'd never meet. No, he hated the real me. And the cruelest part? He loved me deeply. He adored me. He cried over me. But he never loved my purpose, my calling, my strength. He loved the parts of me that fit into his world, and feared the parts of me that came from my father's world. If you think that love alone is enough to sustain a relationship, I'm telling you now, from the deepest part of my experience, it's not. Love isn't enough if it demands shrinking. Love isn't enough if it demands silence. Love isn't enough if it demands erasure. So this is my story. A story about the lie that started everything, the war that changed everything, the betrayal that ended everything, and the truth that ultimately set me free. Let me take you back to the beginning. My story begins long before I met David. It begins in a house where discipline was a language, silence was normal, and love looked nothing like tenderness. My father was a general, the kind of man whose presence filled a room even when he said nothing. He lived with a spine so straight it could have been carved from steel. He lived with a moral code that could cut glass. And he raised me the only way he knew how, with firmness, structure, rules, expectations. I admired him fiercely as a child. Every morning at 5, without fail, he knocked on my door with 2 mugs of coffee, black for him, barely sugared for me, and said, "Boots on, let's run." By 8 years old, my legs were used to burning. By 10, he had taken me on my first wilderness navigation challenge, leaving me with only a compass, a map, and instructions to find your way home. I didn't panic. I didn't cry. I completed it in under an hour. He nodded once, approvingly, and that single gesture felt like applause. That was love in my house. Not hugs, not softness, not warmth. Training was love. Preparation was love. Teaching me to stand tall was love, and I absorbed it like religion. By the time I was an adult, the army wasn't just a career choice. It felt like destiny. But destiny comes at a cost, especially when the world you live in doesn't know how to date a woman like me. Men outside the military thought I was intimidating. Men inside the military thought I was competition. I learned to swallow loneliness the way soldiers swallow dust, quietly, without complaint. Then, one ordinary morning, the universe tipped upside down. It was my first day home after a long deployment. My body felt like a stretched rubber band, tired, sore, and vaguely vibrating with the leftover adrenaline that never truly leaves you after months abroad. My best friend insisted we get coffee. "You need to see a normal human being," she said, "preferably a cute one." We walked into a small cafe just as a man was trying to open the door for us. He smiled nervously and spilled his entire cup of hot coffee on the floor. His eyes went wide. He froze like he'd committed a crime. "Oh no, I swear I'm not usually this clumsy," he stammered. "I'm so sorry. I'll clean it up, He knelt down, panicked, grabbing every napkin in sight. For some reason, maybe the exhaustion, maybe the absurdity, I laughed. A real laugh, a laugh I hadn't felt in months. He looked up, cheeks crimson, but then he laughed too. Soft, embarrassed, infectious. That was the moment David entered my world. He had soft brown eyes that crinkled when he smiled. A gentle voice. A presence that felt like warm sunlight, the opposite of the sharp-edged men I worked beside. We stood at the counter waiting for replacements, talking like we were old friends. He was charming in a quiet, thoughtful way. The kind of charming that wasn't performed, it simply existed. When my friend wandered off with a smirk, David said, "I know this is forward, but would it be okay if I asked for your number?" I surprised myself by saying, "Yes." It felt easy, natural, oddly right. But then came the moment that should have changed everything. "So what do you do?" he asked, smiling. And my heart stuttered. The truth, I'm a soldier, never landed well with men. They either fetishized it or feared it. I didn't want either reaction from him, so I smiled, took a slow breath and said, I work for the government. Not untrue, just incomplete. A seed of dishonesty planted in soil already sensitive. If only I knew how deeply that seed would root. Our second date felt like stepping into a world I had forgotten existed. Warm, slow, gentle. The restaurant was tiny and intimate, the kind where the lights were intentionally dim and the mismatched chairs made the whole place feel charming rather than cheap. A soft jazz track played in the background, and the entire room smelled faintly of roasted garlic and warm bread. We talked about everything: childhood memories, embarrassing stories, first jobs, the worst movies we'd ever seen. I felt myself relaxing in a way I hadn't in years. With David, there was no edge, no alertness humming under my skin. His calm washed over me like warm water. At some point, he laughed at something I said. A small, genuine laugh that made his eyes crinkle, and he placed his palm over mine on the table. "You know," he said softly, "you're easy to talk to. I didn't expect that." "Is that a compliment?" I teased. "It is. A big one." The server refilled our water glasses. David watched him walk away, then turned back to me with an expression that had shifted. Not darker, just deeper. Curious. "So," he began, swirling his straw absent-mindedly, "when you say you work for the government, what exactly does that mean?" My stomach tightened, a reflex at this point. "Logistics," I said lightly. "Federal coordination, it's complicated." "Complicated how?" "It's a lot of moving parts. Hard to explain without boring you." He smiled and let it go. Or at least I thought he did. We continued eating, laughing, slipping into comfortable conversation again. But then, somewhere between dessert and the check, he leaned back in his chair as if bracing himself for something significant. "Can I tell you something a little heavy?" he asked. I nodded. He exhaled, eyes lowering to the table for a moment before meeting mine again. "My parents raised me very differently than most people. They're lifelong pacifists, not the peace and love skip-through meadows type, the serious kind, the kind with scars." His voice softened. "My mom lost 2 brothers in conflict before I was born. My dad lost his father in Vietnam, but not during combat. He died later from things he saw there. Trauma, depression. It swallowed him." My breath caught. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. David nodded gratefully. Growing up, our house was filled with those stories, not heroic ones, not patriotic speeches, just grief. Conversations about how war takes pieces of people that never grow back. They drilled it into me. Violence destroys, peace heals. He rubbed the back of his neck. "I know that sounds idealistic, maybe naive, but it shaped everything about how I see the world. I can't ignore it." He paused, searching my face. "That's why I feel strongly about certain things, especially the military." There it was, the shadow sliding across his voice. I kept my expression neutral, but a quiet panic began rising in my chest. "What do you mean?" I asked carefully. He hesitated. "For me, the army isn't safety or honor. It's the machine that took almost everyone my parents loved. They raised me believing it shouldn't exist." "And you believe that too?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "With all my heart." Silence stretched between us, not hostile, just heavy. Then he said something that felt like a stone dropping into the center of my chest. "So I guess I should ask, what's your opinion on the military?" My heart lurched. Why that question? Why now? I swallowed. "I think serving your country is honorable," I said carefully. "It takes courage, resilience, selflessness." David tilted his head, lips pressing into a line. "And necessary?" he asked. "In my opinion, yes." He sighed, not in annoyance, but in quiet frustration, as if he wished he could change that truth just by willing it so. "The thing is," he said, leaning forward, "I think if armies didn't exist, wars wouldn't either. Violence only breeds more violence. My parents always told me, the moment you pick up a gun, you've already lost." the words hit me like a subtle slap. I had picked up guns my entire life. I had been trained on them since adolescence. I had protected people with them. But I kept my face still. "I respect your perspective," I said calmly. "But not everyone gets to choose peace. Some people have to defend it." "See?" he whispered, shaking his head. "That's exactly what my parents warned me about. The logic of war. Justifying it. It's how it keeps going." He wasn't angry. He wasn't condescending, just passionate, convicted, and deeply wounded by the ghosts of a family I never met. Part of me understood. Part of me hurt. Part of me feared that if I told him the truth, he would see me not as a woman, but as a threat to everything he believed. I should have said it then. I'm a soldier. But the way he looked at me, soft, hopeful, a little curious, made the words stick in my throat like thorns. Instead, I changed the topic. We finished our dessert. We walked outside. He kissed me gently, brushing his lips against mine like he was afraid to break me. For a moment, I forgot everything else. But deep down, I knew. The truth I had buried was growing like a fault line beneath us. And one day, it would break. The month after our second date felt like something out of someone else's life. Not mine. I had lived through deployments, through sandstorms that scraped the skin, through nights when the world went silent right before danger struck. But nothing in those years prepared me for the strange, gentle peace of falling in love with someone like David. He didn't rush me, didn't push, didn't expect me to fit any mold, at least not yet. He sent good morning texts that made my stomach flutter. He planned dates. Little ones, big ones, thoughtful ones. He showed up at my door with takeout from places he knew I liked. He let me talk when I needed to talk and stayed quiet when silence felt safest. He made me feel human. Not a soldier, not a weapon, not a shadow in uniform, just Lyla. I didn't realize how starved I was for that feeling until it was in my hands. But the lie I had told him, the government job lie, followed me everywhere. It sat with me when we held hands. It hovered between us when he kissed me. It pulsed in my chest when he looked at me with admiration I hadn't earned honestly. More than once I rehearsed the confession in my bathroom mirror. "David, I'm a soldier. David, I serve overseas. David, my father is a general and I grew up training for this life." Each version felt heavier. I imagined his face falling. I imagined him pulling away. I imagined him hearing my truth and suddenly seeing me not as his sweet, funny girlfriend, but as a threat to everything he'd been raised to fear. So I stayed silent. Cowardly, maybe. Human, definitely. 33 days after we met, at 3:17 p.m., my phone buzzed with a notification that ripped the ground out from under me. "Deployment confirmed. Report in 2 weeks." My heart sank. I stared at the message until the letters blurred. This was it. There was no hiding now. That evening, I invited David over. He arrived smiling, carrying a paper bag of Thai food and a bottle of white wine. "You look tense," he said gently, brushing a strand of hair from my cheek. "Everything okay?" I stepped back. He noticed. His smile faltered. "David, we need to talk." He set the food down slowly like he was bracing for impact. "All right," he said softly. "Tell me." My throat tightened. My heartbeat drowned out every coherent thought. Just say it. Just say it." I'm in the army." Silence. Not the stunned kind. The deadly kind. The kind that empties the air and freezes the world. David blinked once. Twice. "I'm sorry," he finally whispered. "You're what?" "I'm a soldier. Active duty. I deploy in 2 weeks." His lips parted, but no words came out. "I should have told you earlier," I continued, words tumbling in panic. "I was scared. I didn't want to lose what we were building. I didn't want—" "You lied to me." "David. No." His voice sharpened, trembling with hurt. "You lied. From day one. You had so many chances to tell me, and you didn't." "I know," I whispered. "I know, and I'm sorry." He ran a shaky hand through his hair. "This isn't about the job," he said. "It's the lie. The secrecy. I told you everything about me, everything about my fears and my family, and you held back the one thing that defines your entire life. It's not because I didn't trust you, I insisted. It's because I liked you too much. I was scared you'd walk away. That wasn't your decision to make, he snapped. And he was right. It wasn't. He paced once, twice, then stopped in front of me. I don't know if I can do this, he whispered. I don't know if I can be with someone who chooses war. It's not choosing war, I said. It's choosing service, purpose, duty. He shook his head. It's choosing a life where you might die. His eyes glistened with unshed tears. I can't watch someone I love walk into danger. I can't. I reached for him. David, please. He stepped back. I need space. Another step. And I need honesty. I don't know if we can come back from this. He walked out without looking back. The door clicked softly behind him. I sank onto the floor and cried until my throat burned. He wasn't gone because I was a soldier. He was gone because I let fear dictate my truth. And that made the loss feel like a knife twisting in my chest. 2 weeks later, I boarded a military flight still hollow from the breakup. It didn't matter that my heart was in pieces. War doesn't pause for emotional wounds. The desert greeted me with scorching daylight and icy nights. The air tasted like dust and heat. The horizon stretched endlessly, an ocean of sand that made you feel both enormous and microscopic. I threw myself into work. Routine became medication. Orders became distraction. Exhaustion became comfort. I didn't let myself think about David. Not during patrols, not during briefings, not even when I laid in my cot at night staring at the fabric ceiling above me. But grief is a patient animal. It waits. It was supposed to be a simple escort, civilians being moved through a vulnerable area. Sun high, heat shimmering off the ground, radios crackling lazily. I scanned the surroundings mechanically, left, right, horizon, shadows. Then I saw him. A little boy, maybe 9, stumbling, tripping over a loose rock. I started toward him. That's when the world changed. A blinding flash, a roar like the sky cracking open. Heat slamming into my side. My legs buckled, my ears filled with ringing so loud it drowned out reality. Instinct, pure instinct, took over. I lunged toward the boy, wrapping my arms around him, pulling him to the ground, shielding him with my body. A second blast shook the earth, debris rained down, voices screamed, boots pounded the ground. Pain tore through me, sharp, hot, unbearable. Then darkness swallowed everything. When consciousness came back, it came in fragments. A white ceiling, a steady beep, a dull ache morphing into fire along my ribs, the sterile smell of antiseptic. And then, my father, standing stiffly in the corner of the hospital room, arms crossed, jaw clenched, eyes filled with a fear he'd never admit to. "You're awake," he said quietly. His voice cracked. I tried to speak, but my throat was raw. He stepped closer. "You're coming home." Not a question, not a discussion, an order. For once, I was too weak to resist. A week into my recovery in the U.S., I was half asleep when I heard someone clearing their throat softly from the doorway. I opened my eyes. David stood there. He looked pale, thinner, haunted. "Hi," he whispered. My breath caught. He stepped inside cautiously, as if afraid I'd disappear if he moved too quickly. "I heard about the explosion," he said. I didn't know if you were alive. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I kept imagining." His voice broke. A tear slid down his cheek. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry for everything. I shouldn't have walked away." Emotions surged through me. Shock, relief, longing, heartbreak. "David," I said softly. "I didn't expect—" "I love you," he blurted. "I never stopped. I panicked. I didn't know how to handle your world. But losing you, even the idea of losing you, shattered me." He moved closer, carefully touching my hand. "I want to be here," he said. For you. For whatever you need. And he was. For 2 months, he visited daily, held my hand, read to me, helped with physical therapy, made me laugh, and slowly, painfully, our broken pieces began to fit together again. One afternoon, sunlight warm on my blanket, he whispered, I don't want to lose you. Not now, not ever. Tears stung my eyes. I'm not going anywhere, I said. I thought I meant it. I didn't know how wrong I was. Recovery wasn't romantic. It was humiliating, painful, slow. The first time I walked without support, David clapped softly, like I'd just performed on stage. The first time I showered without help, he brought me a towel and kissed my forehead. And the first time he saw my scar, thick, raised, angry along my ribs, he whispered, You didn't deserve this. I didn't say it aloud, but I thought, no soldier does. After 2 months, my body was strong enough for reassignment, and my commanding officer notified me. You're cleared for duty, he said on the phone. Deployment in 8 weeks. I told David that evening. He sat very still, fork halfway to his mouth. You're going back? I nodded. That's my job. His eyes filled with a desperation I didn't recognize. I can't live through that again, he whispered. I can't sit here wondering if you're alive. I leaned forward. I'll be careful. I'll come home. People always say that, he said bitterly. You're not invincible. No one is. But I'm trained, and I have a purpose. He shook his head. I don't want a life where my partner disappears into war zones. And I don't want a life where my partner resents my service. His silence was sharper than shouting. But love smooths over conflict, temporarily at least. We held each other that night with a desperation that felt like begging the universe for mercy. Neither of us knew we were about to break each other in ways far worse than lies or arguments. Saying goodbye before deployment is always hard. But this time, with David, it felt like my heart was splitting in two. We had spent weeks pretending everything was fine, pretending our healed relationship was unbreakable, pretending that love alone could hold 2 different worlds together like duct tape over a bullet hole. We agreed that after this next mission, 8 more months, we'd settle down. Marriage, kids, a stable future. It felt like a promise we were ready to keep. I believed him. I wanted to believe him so badly. But people who fear losing you often try to hold you too tightly. And sometimes, they break you in the process. 1 week before deployment, we had what felt like one of our most intimate, emotional nights together. The kind where vulnerability feels like its own language, spoken through touches rather than words. David held me close afterward, his arms wrapped around me as if trying to imprint my shape into his memory. I just hate that you're leaving again, he whispered into my shoulder. I know, I murmured, but this is the last mission before my break. It'll go fast. He kissed the back of my neck, softly, almost desperately. We'll start our life when you get back, he said, a quieter one. I nodded, closing my eyes. But somewhere inside, a strange tension pulled at me, a feeling I couldn't name. We fell asleep tangled together. For the first time in weeks, I dreamed peacefully. I didn't know that when I woke up, my entire life would tilt off its axis. Morning light streamed through the curtains, golden and warm. David was still asleep beside me, chest rising and falling steadily, lips slightly parted. He looked innocent, sweet, peaceful. I slipped quietly out of bed to get ready for the day. I had a long list of pre-deployment tasks to complete. But when I went to throw out the small packet from last night, something felt off. I froze. The wrapper was untouched, perfectly sealed. My heartbeat spiked. Slowly, carefully, I picked it up. No tear, no use. I felt the floor tilt under my feet. Then I turned slowly toward David, the man who had held me so lovingly the night before, the man who whispered promises about our future, the man who said he trusted me, supported me, loved me. My voice cracked with disbelief. David, wake up. He stirred groggily, rubbing his eyes, smiling sleepily when he saw me. "Morning, beautiful. You're up early." "David," I said again, this time sharper. "Wake up." His smile faded. He sat up slowly, sensing something was wrong. "What's wrong?" I held up the unopened wrapper. "This is unused." His face went pale, instantly, unmistakably. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Lyla," he whispered. My voice trembled. "What did you do?" He swallowed hard, his throat bobbing. I was gonna tell you." "When?" I snapped. "When?" "I don't know. I panicked." I stared at him in a horror that felt cold and burning at the same time. "So you just didn't use anything? And hoped I wouldn't notice?" "I knew you wouldn't," he whispered, as if that justified anything. "You were emotional. It was dark. We were close. You thought what, David?" I choked out. "That you could make a life-altering decision for me? Without my consent?" He stood, reaching for me. "I did it because I love you. Because I'm scared." "No," I said, stepping back. "You did it because you wanted to trap me." His face contorted. "That's not fair. I wanted to keep you." "That's the same thing." He shook his head fiercely. "I don't want you going back there, Lyla. I can't do it again. I can't sit here wondering if you'll survive. If having a baby means you stay safe, then isn't that good?" "No," I whispered. "No, David, that's manipulation. That's taking away my power over my own body." He tried to take my hands. I yanked them away. "Lyla, please, you have to understand." "I understand," I said, voice cracking. "That you violated my trust in the most intimate way possible." He grew frantic. "I love you." "You don't love me," I said. "You love the version of me that stays home. You love the dream where I stop being a soldier." He didn't argue. He didn't deny it. He just cried. And that was almost worse. I didn't leave him that morning. I didn't scream or pack my bags. I simply refused to speak to him, not out of pettiness, but because I couldn't trust my voice. I couldn't trust myself not to break into 1,000 pieces. He apologized every day, sent flowers, left notes, called, begged. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I was desperate. I just want you safe. I want a family. I want you." But every message made it worse, not better, because it proved he still didn't understand. Love without respect is possession. Love without consent is control. By the time I boarded the plane to the Middle East, my heart was numb. Not broken, not angry, just numb. I didn't even take a pregnancy test. I thought one time would change nothing. But life doesn't care about assumptions. 3 weeks into deployment, nausea had become my constant companion. At first, I blamed the heat, the dehydration, the exhaustion. But one morning, after vomiting twice before sunrise, a medic insisted, "Let's test you." I already knew. Before the words left his mouth, I knew. "Congratulations," he said gently. "You're pregnant." My heart sank. A child should bring joy, but all I felt was betrayal, fear, rage. My commanding officer notified my father immediately. Within 48 hours, I was pulled from duty and put on a flight home. The general, my father, met me at the airport. His face was unreadable. He walked ahead of me, not beside me, as if silently processing that his daughter, the soldier he raised, had been grounded by a man's desperation. He didn't speak until we reached the car. "We'll talk later," he said. "You need rest." And that was that. My engagement should have been the happiest moment of my life, but the ring felt heavier than metal. It felt like a shackle disguised in diamonds. David proposed the day after I returned home. A fancy dinner at a rooftop restaurant. A velvet box. The city glowing around us. He knelt in front of me, eyes shining. "Lyla, I can't imagine my life without you. This baby is a blessing. A second chance. Marry me." People at surrounding tables applauded. I smiled. I nodded. I whispered yes. But inside, something small and fragile curled into a ball, suffocating under the weight of the moment. He slipped the ring onto my finger with trembling hands, kissed me, whispered, "I love you," again and again. But his love felt like a net, soft in texture, strong in hold. Pregnancy has a way of stripping you down, physically, emotionally, psychologically. My body felt foreign. My hormones were a battlefield of their own. My mind was split between fear and numbness, and through it all, David hovered. At first it felt supportive, even sweet. He cooked for me, drove me to appointments, insisted on carrying everything heavier than a water bottle. But slowly, the sweetness thickened into suffocation. He started making comments like, "You shouldn't lift that. You're too fragile now. You need rest. You can't exert yourself. Your job is to grow a healthy baby. Nothing else matters." Nothing else. Not my autonomy. Not my identity. Not my strength. Nothing else mattered but his need for control disguised as care. The first time he criticized the military openly, I was folding tiny newborn onesies. "You know," he said, leaning against the doorway, "our son won't grow up around that." I looked up. Around what? The military mindset. What mindset? He shrugged. You know, violence, war, toxic patriotism, the illusion that sacrifice is noble. My breath caught in my throat. "That's not an illusion," I said quietly. "It's a calling." He scoffed. "No, it's indoctrination." The words hit me like a slap. I stood up slowly. "I gave my life to service. My father did too. You can disagree, but you don't get to insult my entire identity." He raised his hands. "I'm just saying the truth. Someone has to show you there's another way to live." Another way. His way. He didn't stop there. At dinner one night, he said, "Do you really want our son exposed to that world? Guns, war stories? Your father's influence?" "My father is a good man," I said. He snorted. "He's a machine, Lyla, and he turned you into one too." I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but crying only made him say, "See? You're too emotional to go back to that world anyway." The irony stung. He mocked the army, my life, my purpose, while accusing me of weakness for reacting. This was no longer love. This was reshaping. As my belly grew, I felt myself shrinking. The world revolved around the baby, and David made sure of it. And part of me wanted to shrink, wanted to slip into this new role, this soft world where danger couldn't reach. But another part screamed inside me, the soldier, the daughter of a general, the woman forged from early morning runs and desert wind and discipline. She felt trapped. She felt erased. She felt like she was losing oxygen. And she was. It happened 2 weeks before my due date. I was nesting, cleaning shelves, organizing books, making space for baby supplies. A quiet, peaceful day. Until I noticed something strange. My military photo frames, usually on the hallway shelf, were gone. Every single one. The graduation photo, my first deployment photo, the group picture of my unit after a humanitarian rescue, even my father pinning my sergeant's stripes on my uniform. All missing. My chest tightened. I searched everywhere, living room, bedroom, office, even under couch cushions. Nothing. I finally found them in the hall closet, shoved behind old coats and a broken vacuum cleaner. Not displayed. Hidden. As though they were shameful. I walked into the living room holding the stack of frames. "David," I said, "why were these in the closet?" He didn't look up from the couch. "I put them away." "Why?" He shrugged, still scrolling on his phone. "I don't want our son seeing that stuff." "That stuff?" I repeated, stunned. "You mean my service? My career?" He sighed, annoyed. "Oh, come on, Lyla, don't be dramatic." "Dramatic?" I whispered. "You hid my achievements like there's something to be ashamed of." He finally put the phone down. "I don't want him growing up thinking the military is heroic or admirable. I don't ever want him to romanticize that life." "That life," I repeated. My voice broke on the words. "That life is who I am." "Well," he said sharply, "maybe it shouldn't be anymore." The room went silent. Even the air felt still. "You're a mother now," he added. "That's what matters, not this." He gestured vaguely at the frames in my hands. In that moment, something inside me cracked. Not shattered, cracked, like a fault line forming deep beneath the surface. The beginning of an earthquake that hadn't yet hit, but soon would. Our son was born on a quiet Wednesday afternoon. The moment I held him, tiny, warm, pink, breathing softly against my chest, I felt something ancient awaken in me. Love so fierce it terrified me. I cried. David cried. Even my father stood in the corner looking like a man wrestling against tears. But joy doesn't erase truth. It only postpones it. 3 days after bringing our baby home, I woke in the middle of the night to the sound of David's voice. Soft, gentle, speaking to our newborn in the rocking chair. At first, the moment felt tender. Then his words pierced the darkness. "You'll never make the mistakes your mother made," he whispered. "You won't follow her path. I'll protect you from that life." Mistakes, mistakes. I stepped into the room quietly. "What mistakes are you talking about?" I asked. He jolted, startled. "Lyla, I didn't mean it like that." "Then how did you mean it?" He hesitated, then said the most telling sentence of our entire marriage. "I don't want him exposed to violence, or military culture, or your father's influence. I want him to be gentle, peaceful, better. Better than me." My heart didn't break. No, it hardened. I lifted my son from his arms. "Go to bed, David," I said softly. "I've got him." He tried to speak again, but I had already turned away, and in that moment I knew. Our marriage was over. It just hadn't collapsed yet. The following morning, the house was silent. David acted like nothing had happened. He made breakfast. He kissed my forehead. He asked how I slept. I didn't answer. After feeding the baby, I walked into the kitchen where he stood slicing fruit. My voice was calm, dead calm. "I'm leaving." He froze, knife halfway through an apple. "What?" "I'm leaving," I repeated. "I'm taking the baby and going to my father's. I'm filing for divorce." His face crumpled. "Lyla, no, please. You're exhausted. You're overwhelmed. You don't mean this." "I mean every word." He shook his head violently. "You can't just walk out. You can't take my son." "I'm not taking him from you," I said coldly. "I'm taking myself away from you." He followed me around the room, panicked. "We can fix this. I'll change. I'll compromise. You can go back to the army when he's older. 10 years old, maybe younger. I'll support whatever you want." "You don't get to allow me," I said. "My life is mine." Tears streamed down his face. "Don't do this," he whispered. "Don't tear our family apart." "You tore it apart," I said, holding my son close, piece by piece. I packed one suitcase, one duffel of baby supplies, and drove to my father's house with trembling hands. He opened the door the second he saw my car. One look at my face was enough. "Come inside," he said gently. Not an order, not a command, an invitation. For the first time in my adult life, my father didn't judge my tears. He simply stood beside me like a pillar, silent but unmovable. And I realized something. David loved who he wanted me to be. But my father, strict, rigid, disciplined, had never once asked me to be anyone but who I was. That night, for the first time in months, I slept peacefully. Not because life was fixed, but because I had stopped betraying myself. Divorce doesn't end on the day you file papers. It ends in the quiet, ordinary moments afterward. The laundry you fold alone, the silence at dinner, the empty half of the bed that your body still expects to be warm. Those first months at my father's house were a strange mix of grief, numbness, and healing. My father didn't hover. He didn't ask questions. He didn't press. He simply existed beside me, a steady presence, a familiar anchor, someone who understood loss in ways he never put into words. He watched my son sometimes so I could shower or nap or cry behind closed doors. He didn't comment when I stood for minutes at a time staring at old photos of myself in uniform. He didn't comment when I clutched my baby too tightly at night, afraid that somehow the world would take him from me too. He didn't comment when I whispered to myself, I don't know how to be me anymore. Instead, he asked softly, would you like to help with a new program we're starting? Veterans reintegration, stateside work, admin support? I hesitated. I wasn't sure I had the strength yet, but something in me, the part he had raised with grit and discipline, said, try. Sam was already part of the program, former reconnaissance team leader, served under my father for years, mid-30s, calm, observant, a man who carried silence the way some people carry confidence. The first day I walked into the training room, balancing my infant carrier and a stack of paperwork, Sam simply nodded. Not surprised, not judging, not reacting to the rumors he had definitely heard. He just said, you must be Sergeant Hale's daughter. I nodded. Lyla. Sam, he said, need help with that? He tilted his head toward the carrier. No, I said automatically. I've got it. He didn't argue, didn't insist, didn't rush to prove himself useful like some men do when a woman in uniform walks in. He simply returned to his task. That was the first moment he earned my respect, without even trying. Weeks passed. We worked side by side, created schedules, designed transition guidelines, interviewed veterans struggling to find their footing, discussed benefits, trauma, family reconciliation. Sam rarely talked about himself, not because he was guarded, but because he understood the value of silence. But whenever he spoke to me, his voice held a gentleness I hadn't felt in years. Not softness, not fear of upsetting me, respect. One afternoon during a particularly intense session with a veteran suffering from severe PTSD, my son, now a few months older, began fussing loudly. I tried to soothe him discreetly, but he squirmed and whimpered, growing more upset. Without saying a word, Sam reached out his arms. May I? He asked. I hesitated, blinking. No man besides David or my father had held my son before, but something in Sam's eyes, steady, certain, patient, made me nod. He lifted my son with the ease of someone who understood fragility without being threatened by it. Hey, little man, he murmured. I've got you. My son instantly quieted. I stared at them, stunned by the unexpected peace of the moment. After the session ended, Sam handed him back and said quietly, You're doing a good job, Lyla. I swallowed hard. I don't feel like I am. You are, he repeated. I can tell. He feels safe with you. I didn't realize it then, but that was the first moment I allowed myself to breathe. One day, while organizing old case files, Sam glanced at a photo on my desk, a picture of me in uniform, standing between two teammates. You look proud there, he said. I was, I replied softly. He studied my face carefully, then asked, When did you stop being proud? The question hit me like a blade slipping between ribs. I didn't answer immediately. Finally, I whispered, When someone I loved made me believe pride was dangerous. Sam's jaw tightened slightly, a rare flicker of emotion. He didn't ask who. He didn't ask why. He didn't pry. He simply said, He was wrong. I looked up. He met my eyes with steady certainty. You can love someone deeply, he said, and still let them poison your identity. Happens more often than people think. But that doesn't mean they were right. I exhaled shakily. He continued, Strength isn't something you erase, or hide, or put away on a shelf. It's part of your bones. If someone can't love you with it, they can't love you at all. My throat tightened. My hands trembled. Those were the words I had needed for years. Words David could never give me. Words my father didn't know how to say. Sam said them effortlessly. Not to impress me, not to win me, but because he meant them. Love didn't strike like lightning. It didn't sweep me off my feet. It didn't feel like a whirlwind. It felt like a sunrise. Invisible at first, then warm, then undeniable. Sam never called me fragile, never tried to protect me from myself, never mocked my past, never belittled my sense of duty. He saw all of me, the soldier, the mother, the daughter, the woman, without flinching, And for the first time since everything fell apart, I felt my identity returning. Piece by piece, day by day, breath by breath. He didn't save me, but he walked beside me while I saved myself, and that mattered more. Some people think divorce is a tragedy, but the truth? Divorce is a boundary, a line drawn in the sand of your own soul saying, here is where I stop losing myself. Here is where I choose to live. My divorce from David finalized quietly. No dramatic courtroom scenes, no shouting, no grand gestures. He tried one last time, outside the courthouse. He looked worn, tired, older in a way stress ages a person. I love you, he said softly. I always will. I didn't want to hurt you. I just didn't want to lose you. I believed him. But love without respect is a prison. Love without autonomy is control. You didn't lose me because of fear, I said. You lost me because you tried to fear me away from myself. He cried. I didn't. For the first time, I felt clear, free, whole. And as I walked away, pushing my son's stroller into the sunlight, I realized something profound. I was finally becoming myself again. Sam never asked me out. There was no grand moment, no confession. It happened in small shifts, in how he waited for me after meetings, how he offered to carry my files when my hands were full of baby gear, how he remembered the exact way I liked my coffee. One evening, after a long day of working with veterans, he said, "Want company on your walk to the car?" I nodded. We walked slowly, my son babbling softly in his stroller. At the parking lot, Sam hesitated slightly. Then he said in the gentlest tone, "You deserve a life where you don't have to choose between love and purpose." I stared at him, feeling my heartbeat trembling inside my chest. "And if you ever want someone," he added quietly, "who understands both, someone who respects both, I'm here." He wasn't asking. He wasn't pressuring. He was offering. For the first time in a long time, I let myself say yes. So yes. Let me tell you how I divorced a man who hated who I was. Let me tell you how I rebuilt myself, how I learned that strength and softness can coexist, how I discovered that motherhood doesn't erase identity, it expands it. Let me tell you how I found someone who didn't fear my fire, someone who didn't demand I dim it, someone who stood beside me, not in front of me, not behind me, but right beside me. His name is Sam, and he never asked me to choose between being a soldier and being a woman worth loving. He understood that I was always both.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and explore our channel for more love, betrayal, and redemption tales.